Brand new work requirements for food stamp recipients, thanks to the big, beautiful law. Those kick in today and could save taxpayers billions. Fox Business's Darren Botello joins us now from Capitol Hill with more. Hey, Darren.
Hi, Dagan. So starting today, millions of food stamp recipients all across the country are going to have to work, volunteer, or participate in job training for at least 80 hours a month. Those are the new requirements. As you said, this is all under the One Big Beautiful Bill that was passed this past summer. And if you don't, you can only receive benefits for 3 months in a 3-year period. This applies to Americans 55 through 64 years old who may have children 14 to 18 years old. This also ends previous exemptions for many homeless people, veterans, and young adults aging out of foster care. Here's SNAP by the numbers. 42 million Americans are on it, with a majority at or below the poverty line and in households that include children, seniors, or someone with a disability. Now, according to the Congressional Budget Office, the new requirements are expected to reduce the average monthly number of SNAP recipients by about 2.4 million people over the next decade. Here's Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins talking to Fox about allegations of SNAP fraud and even illegal immigrants using the program under the Biden administration.
We asked every state for the first time in history, and this was in February, to send us their data and let us, with DOJ and a war room, actually start going through this data to better understand how this explosion of SNAP benefits happened under Joe Biden. We've studied about $100 billion in spend. We have found thousands and thousands of illegal use of the EBT card. We have been moving people off of SNAP. We've got almost 700,000 people, I think, we've moved off.
And if you're new to SNAP, the rules could start immediately or at your next recertification. Dagan?
Darren, thank you for that report. Darren Botello for us on Capitol Hill. EJ, how big a deal is this?
I think it's huge. It's something like 2/3 almost of able-bodied adults getting SNAP benefits aren't working right now. I mean, that's appalling. These are able-bodied adults. Yes, you look at those numbers that were just on the screen. You can see how many of them are in poverty, right? Have little to no income. But for many of these people, that's a choice, and that's not right. This is actually a moral issue. It's not just economic. It is morally wrong that the taxpayer is footing the bill for people who can but are simply choosing not to work. That's not right.
There's some great numbers out there from the federal government, okay? You don't have to go to some obscure think tank somewhere. Federal government telling us nearly 12% of SNAP benefits, or $10.5 billion, were improper last year. The overpayment rate is something like 9.84%. And the national payment error rate, 10.93% in 2024. So we've got issues. Some of it is the government just not administering this program very well. And the rest of it is exactly what EJ was saying. People getting benefits who maybe shouldn't.
Another good thing about COVID is I think this brought to life. I remember my dad in the middle of COVID saying, I can't hire enough people because they're getting paid more to stay at home. And I can't meet the government's per hour wage. I can't do it. And I try to hire them and they laugh at me saying, I'd rather stay home and collect more money than work and collect less money and then pay taxes on the money that you're going to pay me. So I think COVID was a very good example, and I think eye-opening for a lot of small business owners out there who were like, oh my gosh, you're right. Like, people will not come to work because they're getting paid to sit at home. But on the other hand, and Brian, you and I started to get into this debate last week, and I want to bring it up again. I firmly believe in my blood, like you said, there is dignity in work. Work is a moral issue. It's good for the soul. It's good for families. It's good for communities. It's good for your work ethic. It's good for kids to see moms and dads go off to work every day. And I firmly believe that Americans in this country actually do want that. I spoke with a lot of people during COVID, and they said, I don't want another government handout. I want you to let me open my business, open up the economy. I don't want a loan. I want revenue, and I want profit. Brian, you sort of hinted, I think, last week that we're undergoing a shift in society right now where there are some younger workers who don't want to work, maybe, right, where there's sort of this entitlement. And I'm hoping that that isn't the case. I'm hoping that there are still people in the generation that, you know, we all grew up with where there was dignity in work and they wanted to. And I'm wondering is that changing? Is this new generation thinking, nah, I feel entitled. I kind of want to sit home and collect that paycheck. I'm not sure I want revenue. I think I want handouts.
I think you're more, as a young person, you're more likely to feel that way if you've gone to college than if you didn't. That actually, I think we, like the elite in America want to teach you that somehow work isn't dignifying, or that a program like this, and I haven't checked in with, AOC or Elizabeth Warren yet to find out what they think about this, but I'm guessing they're against it. I'm sure they think that throwing people, that's the wrong word, people moving off of SNAP is somehow immoral to do that. And that is just so dangerous to me, because I agree with you. Work is a dignifying thing. It's how we become adults. And when you've got 2.4 million people who are going to move off of SNAP, and that's still not very many. We've got almost 42 million people on SNAP, more than 1 in 10 Americans. Okay, that's just crazy. So I think it's good that they're going to move off of SNAP through work to a self-sustaining life. And that's what these work requirements are about. 80 hours per month, okay, to receive assistance. That's not a 40-hour work week, obviously, but it does require people to get in the game. And that is the most helpful thing you can do for somebody, is to move them into a game they can play themselves and sustain themselves and their family with.
Can I just say one quick thing here, though? I don't think we get rid of SNAP. I don't want to get rid of SNAP. I think there are people out there who need it and deserve it, and we should be helping. We have to have an open heart to that, right?
But who's calling to get rid of it? I don't think anybody's calling to get rid of it.
No, but I think it could easily be misunderstood what we're saying here, and I don't want it to be misunderstood. We just want the program to be run efficiently, help the people who need help.
I just think about how much was stolen from Paycheck Protection, the unemployment benefits, and the EIDL loans, the emergency loans that went out from the Small Business Administration during COVID, because the government, the federal government, and President Trump was running the country at the time, shut the government down and just sent hundreds of billions of dollars out. I think it was, trillions. I think $500 billion was stolen, just stolen. And they're still trying to prosecute people for stealing it. And I just look at the recklessness. We focus on SNAP, but the recklessness of government, looking at the budget numbers, we're running a $284 billion budget deficit in October, that government spending didn't fall, even adjusting for payments that were made in October that should have been made in November. Government spending was flat. If you don't adjust for that time shift, government spending in October, when the government was shut down, was up 18%, $689 billion. Just the wide open, full throttle, hammer down recklessness of this government. Because the next time the country slows down, the economy slows down, it's going to be spigots open again. Am I wrong? I'm looking at you. Answer me.
Well, the amazing thing is you're seeing these kinds of deficits when there's not an emergency.
Right, that's my point.
When the government was shut down, you were seeing these kinds of deficits.
So
like
you said, Dagan, once a recession hits and tax revenue goes down and entitlement spending goes up, it only gets worse, a lot worse. And I think that's probably explains some of the movement you've seen recently with Treasury yields.
Well, good on Brooke Rollins, the administration, for doing this. They're not going to get any credit from it from the left, and good on them for doing it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm just...
No, what you were saying, good on them for... I was getting ahead of my skis. Good on them for... Finish your sentence. I interrupted you.
Doing this.
Okay.
You were right on your skis there. You were ski jumping like Eddie the Eagle into that.
Yeah.
Nice job.
Because again, there'll just be massive fraud again, because we'll be in a rush to get money out the door. Can't hand money out fast enough to people for them to steal it from you who work and pay your taxes.
It is time for the hot topic of the hour. One of the country's largest counties now securing a universal basic income program where low-income households are guaranteed monthly payments. Fox Business's Kelly Severi is live from Chicago, where this program is unfolding after a lot of public discourse over this decision. Kelly.
Good morning, Cheryl. This is what we know so far. $7.5 million will go towards this program, but who qualifies, how much the payments will be, and what recipients can spend this money on are still up in the air. The group Economic Security Illinois says almost all of the participants use these payments of Cook County's 2022 pilot program for their basic necessities. Cook County once had the nation's largest such program, using money from the American Rescue Plan Act. For 2 years, monthly payments of $500 were given to 3,250 households, no strings attached. 56% of those in the program were employed with an average income of $21,000. Now, 94% of recipients of the money went to emergency expenses, while an Illinois think tank says that they don't believe this expense, or excuse me, that this money for these people is not worth the expense to Illinois taxpayers. Listen to this.
There are over 700,000 individuals in Cook County who are below the federal poverty line. If you extended it to every individual at current program rates, that would cost over $4 billion.
We're told the county's Bureau of Economic Development will have some of the answers to our questions by mid to late 2026. Cheryl, back to you.
Kelly Saberi, thank you so much. A lot to unpack there from this. And, you know, to be clear, what they're talking about here is with this guaranteed basic income is there's no requirement. Which is different from universal income, which goes to everybody. But we've seen this in Los Angeles, Chicago, where we just came from, Denver, San Francisco, Houston. You know, many critics say this is nothing more than an extension of welfare benefits, and that you disenfranchise people from going out and seeking meaningful employment. It is not, it's a handout, not a hand up.
Exactly. And this is exactly the progressive strategy is they'll put something out there that makes you dependent on the government, and then they'll go back and say, well, why would you possibly oppose giving poor people money, right? Mm-hmm. They frame it this perfect way. They do the same thing covering up socialism on all sorts of issues. I mean, you look at the Green New Deal, which I refer to as watermelon policy, where it's green on the outside and it's red on the inside, because it's really just socialism. But they go back and they say, how could you possibly go against protecting the environment? Meanwhile, it's easier to build things in America that are cleaner and better than the Chinese that, you know, conveniently these folks don't talk about. But that's how they continue to cover up their socialist goals, is by framing it in the most positive way possible.
That it's humane,
right.
And there's something wrong with you if you don't agree.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then hiding the fact that it makes people dependent, which is as inhumane as it gets.
But that is unfortunately whether it's SNAP or it's welfare assistance or it's housing assistance, I mean, that's what ends up happening in many of these instances. And sometimes you end up with these nonprofits that come in and you've got fraudulent activity, and next thing you know, you've got a corruption investigation.
Exactly.
Looking at you, New York City. Sorry, but and that's again another criticism when cities are already strapped.
Well,
and I'm sorry, but I don't think the fiscal house in Chicago is exactly solid right now.
Well, exactly. There is a $1.2 billion deficit in the city of Chicago. And so Cook County, which is the county that's proposing this universal income solution, well, guess what? Guess where Chicago is? Cook County. So where's the money going to come from? My guess, they're going to try to put more taxes on the wealthy or on businesses, which is why so many businesses have left and why so many of the wealthy have left. And they've gone north. They've gone to up the lake to places like Kenilworth and Winnetka and Lake Forest, et cetera. And those towns now are incredibly red and very conservative because all of the money has left the old Gold Coast of Chicago, which is gorgeous. I mean, you know, you can go up Park Avenue just right that way and see beautiful elegant old co-ops. Well, guess what? Go to Chicago along the Gold Coast and it's exactly the same thing. The problem is they're now trading at a fraction of the New York City prices because they're being sold. Everyone wants to get out because get out while you still can. The taxes are so high.
What do you make about the concerns about inflation, Adam? Because many economists say when you look at different programs like this, whether it's universal basic income or it's targeted, that it actually ends up raising prices in these communities.
Well, I mean, yes and no. anytime you give people money, that is stimulus. And whether it's welfare or whether it's PPP checks that came out during COVID, if you're giving people money, they are going to spend it. But if we're talking about a program that, at least at this stage, sounds very small, and it's going to a small number of people who are strapped and probably not able to spend a whole lot of money, I'm not sure that it's really going to have an inflationary effect.
And maybe that criticism is because, but again, this goes back to, you know, the fact that these are these progressive policies that we are seeing in many blue cities.
Yeah, and those kind of things are going to antagonize the people that they're eventually going to need help from when they run out of money. And so eventually when they run out of this, you're going to get the, you know, drop dead New York, drop dead Chicago headline.
Well, that's the problem with socialism. Eventually you run out of other people's money.
Thank you, Margaret Thatcher.
Thank you, Margaret Thatcher. I was just about to, my favorite line, socialism is great until you run out of everybody else's money.
The House and Treasury Department have launched investigations into alleged fraud under Governor Tim Walz's leadership in Minnesota. Joining me now is House Majority Whip Tom Emmer, who is from Minnesota. House Majority Whip, thank you for being here. Appreciate you coming in. You know, the most damning indictment I've seen of Governor Walz so far came from an unlikely source, by the way. The Department of Human Service employees in Minnesota came out with this ex post, and they're usually tend, I think, from the center to the left. But boy, they put it right where I think it belongs. Tim Walz is 100% responsible for massive fraud in Minnesota. We let Tim Walz know of fraud early on. He systematically retaliated against whistleblowers and did his best to discredit fraud reports. So not only did he look the other way, but he was retaliating against those people who did spot the fraud and the cause of the fraud. What price should he pay for this?
Oh, I think he should be held accountable to whatever the highest level is. Look, when you have the former acting U.S. attorney say that the amount of fraud that went through the Walz administration, he's in his 7th year, it takes your breath away. When you have the New York Times, of all publications, saying it's staggering, the brazenness. You've already got $1 billion in fraud that's been identified, starting with the largest pandemic fraud case in the country, but also going to housing fraud, daycare fraud, Medicaid fraud. I mean, the number could ultimately reach $2 billion. And my hat's off to those Minnesota state employees.
Absolutely. Because
what they're doing is they're saying, you know what? This guy knew, or he certainly should have known how bad this was, because we were telling him. The state is literally administering federal dollars in many of these programs, Medicaid, for instance. The state, whoever is responsible in the Walz administration, and if it's Tim Walz, he should be the one answering for it if he knew and allowed this to happen. By the way, the investigation that's taking place, Jamie Comer, the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, announced that he's going to be looking into this. And Scott Bessent yesterday, the Treasury Secretary, said he's going to investigate the fact that, you know, out of the 80-some people charged in the Feeding Our Future fraud scam, 78 of them were from the Somali community. Now, David, not all Somalis are criminals, but we're talking about criminal activity that was committed by primarily Somali residents in the Twin Cities. And they were shipping that money back to Somalia. And there's plenty of anonymous reports out there saying that it went to Al-Shabaab, but you don't even need those.
Right.
All you need to know is Al-Shabaab, a known terrorist group,
they take a piece of everything. They take a piece of everything that comes into that country.
Amen.
If anybody knows Somali. And the point is, you know, I have to use words like alleged and supposedly and reportedly. In this case, no. There are people who have admitted, I believe dozens of people now have pled guilty to this. So this is more than allegations. This is stuff we know about. And again, the question is whether Governor Walz turned the other way and was belittling those reports by whistleblowers because he relies on the Somali community to elect him and to re-elect him and re-elect him.
Yeah, it's even worse than that. Tim Walz and Keith Ellison, it has been reported to me, not only stopped investigating fraud by certain groups like these Somali fraudsters, but they actually, as these whistleblowers are now confirming, they actually actively stopped people from investigating this fraud. This is not incompetence. You don't let $1 billion plus go through the state government that you're in charge of, get dispersed out to criminals and shipped back to terrorists overseas without having somebody being complicit in this act. And whoever that is, whoever it might be, how many it might be, they should all have to answer.
Well, there's a phrase in this note from the Human Service employees. It says he systematically retaliated against whistleblowers. Isn't that alone a crime?
Absolutely. And I mean, by the way, his being the governor of Minnesota is the ultimate crime. This guy is a fraud from the word go. He lied about his military career. He got caught on national TV, David, lying about when he was at Tiananmen Square. How dumb is that? And his answer was, sometimes he's a bit of a knucklehead. Well, guess what? Whatever the criminal enterprise that was being run through the state of Minnesota, we need to find out exactly who is responsible within his administration.
And by the way, this isn't just Minnesota. This is happening all over. We had a guest from New York talking about this yesterday. It's happening in New York City. It's happening in a lot of places. I'm reminded of that Reagan quote. We only have 10 seconds. Government is not the solution. Government is the problem. Go ahead.
I totally agree. And in this case, I'm just grateful for President Donald Trump actually making this a topic. We've been trying to sound the alarm for the last 3 years. Nobody would report it, David. It took Donald Trump to raise the specter of the fraud that's happening in Minnesota. And now thank you for reporting it and everybody else.
Well, even the mainstream media can't avoid it anymore. And thank God you're not avoiding it. Majority Whip Tom Emmer, great to see you, sir. Thank you. Have a good vacation.
Hundreds of state workers at the Minnesota Department of Human Services publicly excoriated Governor Tim Walz for allowing a, quote, massive fraud scandal to unfold under his watch and retaliating against their whistleblowers. The X account, which represents over 480 staffers at that department, saying, quote, Tim Walz is 100% responsible for massive fraud in Minnesota. We will let Tim Walz know of fraud early on, hoping for a partnership in stopping fraud. But no, we got the opposite response. Walz systematically retaliated against whistleblowers using monitoring, threats, repression, and did his best to discredit fraud reports. This, as a group of Minnesota state government employees wrote to former Vice President Harris and the DNC multiple times, warning them about Governor Walz and what they described as his incompetence, fraud scandals, and retaliation. Here's what they said. We tried our best to keep the public informed. As our tweets are public, maybe Kamala turned a blind eye to fraud like her running mate. Over the years, our messages have not changed. We need fraud to stop in Minnesota and good governance to be restored. Minnesota is currently at the center of a widening fraud scandal. Federal prosecutors continue to unravel this. One of the nation's largest COVID-era fraud cases. So what happened here, Chris, is that really going back to the COVID days, there's this agency, the Minnesota Medicaid Housing Stabilization Services Fund. There's also another one, Feeding Our Future. Basically, the allegations is that all of this money was being stolen by those in the Somali community in the Twin Cities, and it was going back to Somalia. They were funneling it, and then it was ending up in the hands of Al-Shabaab, which is a designated terrorist organization.
Right, and so I did not have Minnesota's welfare funds going to terrorist organizations on my bingo card, and that's what is so frustrating about all this, because we knew Tim Walz was a disastrous VP candidate. He's a dork. He's very annoying. He's supposed to be this everyman, but doesn't know.
Not smart.
Not very bright. The president used a different word for that. But the oppo, the research that should have been done during the campaign, should have brought this up. This is a huge bombshell that not only does he have all those negative characteristics, oh, by the way, his government was also funding terrorists and Al-Shabaab in Somalia. That should have been devastating for the Harris-Walz campaign.
We could be talking about $1 billion potentially. Shocking. And the first time I saw this yesterday was Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent actually posting about it. He says, we're going to do an investigation. I mean, this is millions and millions of dollars coming from taxpayers going to this terrorist.
Well, even
allegedly.
Yeah, even the New York Times, which, as we know, is typically very friendly to Democrats, leading with an article, quote, how fraud swamped Minnesota's social services system on Tim Walz's watch. If you remember, as soon as the Harris campaign named him as a running mate, his family came out. Remember? The Waltz family against Waltz. There were 15 of them. They had sweatshirts made. They said, no, he's a bad guy. You don't want him as number 2 in this country. And here we are. It's all finally coming out.
That they were taking cash and putting it on flights, going to Somalia. And that this goes beyond Minnesota. It goes across Somali communities in the U.S. and in Western Europe. So more on this to come, I'm sure.
Governor Hochul drew the wrath of some environmentalists and some residents over this proposed underwater gas pipeline that would go out near Staten Island and out to the Rockaways. Do you plan to weigh in on that?
Look,
I think you're on the record as opposing it.
I'm on the record as opposing any new fossil fuel construction, and it's part of a commitment to taking on the climate crisis.
God help us.
Yeah.
The mayor of Affordability, Zoran Mondani, says he's against any new fossil fuel production. That would include the recently approved $1 billion underwater natural gas pipeline that is expected to drive down energy bills and power 2.3 million homes in New York City. This pipeline, it will provide 400,000 decatherms per day to Brooklyn, Queens, and Long Island. It is the first new gas pipeline in at least 10 years, the state's largest expansion of fossil fuel infrastructure since passing its stupid, I wish it would die, climate law. I could go on, but Cuomo killed the Constitution pipeline. But how do you think we get how the power plants work? But they kill a pipeline. Yes.
You are not going to bring energy costs down without putting the infrastructure in place. That's been part of the problem. And why Kathy Hochul was pro-pipeline is because she's gotten a lot of the flack of not being able to bring energy costs down, not just in the city, but also in the state. This kind of stuff will be his ticket right out of office, because if energy costs keep going up and people keep suffering, and he gets blocked on some of his other stuff that he wants to do with housing and free buses and grocery stores, some of it seems pipe dreamish, he won't be able to do anything, and people will continue to suffer, except that you will have lost all the tax revenue from the people who have said, I don't want to stay here anymore because you're trying to rip me off, and then we won't have any money left either. When he talks about not being into construction or new fossil fuel construction as a commitment to taking on the climate crisis, like, we are past the climate crisis.
That was my question. What climate crisis? And you know me. Well, love the animals.
And that's what killed us under Joe Biden. All of the green spending on this climate crisis that hasn't really materialized. People keep joking with me, but it's funny, but it's not funny, that it's freezing outside and there is no climate crisis.
But the climate crisis isn't about the animals. All of these climate fake made-up solutions like solar farms and wind farms kill animals and kill wildlife and kill sea life and kill bird life.
Birds and whales.
Oh, that's true.
So anyway, he can keep doing this. He can double down on the craziness. The only people that'll be left here to vote for him are people that, see the world the way he sees it. But we need that infrastructure, not just here, in other states. I was talking to Harris Faulkner earlier about California. Taylor, you know all about it, and the problems that Gavin Newsom has there, because he doesn't want to extract the energy that he has. He wants to import it. He wants all these different blends and regulations to make it harder for people, and they're paying, double the price of gas that they should be.
You can't be into affordability and climate crisis at the same time.
Gotta pick one.
You can't. They're diametrically opposed. You have to pick one or the other, and he wants both. And by the way, he's behind the times too. Remember, Bill Gates said, actually, I was just kidding about this. And did you see this? I just saw this today. The journal Nature, which I'm sure you read every day. I don't read it every day. You probably read it.
I read it.
Oh my God.
I read it, and it's gone.
So Nature they printed an article last year, one of these typical ones where the global economy is shot because of climate change. And then today or yesterday, they had to retract that article Because there were errors with the data.
Right.
So, Mamdani, like, you got to read the latest thing. It's not a crisis anymore. You're killing your bread and butter affordability because you can't let go of your old fling, climate change.
He sounds crazy, too. He just
Well, he's
sounds
not
crazy.
in yet, and he's making promises because he's not actually having to govern until January. And I want to be fair with this guy. He ran a masterful campaign from social media. My own social people said he was incredible in figuring out algorithms on every platform. Everything he did, it was really high top quartile engagement, and he won that way. He has a big challenge, though, and you're detailing some of the policy decisions he has to make. This is not a country that he's managing. He's managing a city with limited federal jurisdiction, limited state jurisdiction. He has to speak upstate to get stuff done or even get money. I would think somewhere between now and when he actually takes the seat as mayor, he's got some soul searching to do on policy, including what you're talking about here. Freezing in the dark because you don't have the gas is a really bad campaign.
We need
Bad
decatherms.
luck.
We need decatherms.
Even your diehard supporters might not continue to support
But I
you
think
then.
that's the kind of thing that, you know, and free food and free transportation, all this stuff is policy. He'll be sitting there never having managed anything. And I'm willing to give him the credit that he managed a great campaign. But now the hard work begins. And I actually say, as a visitor of New York waiting for my free stuff, I wish him good luck because I've been waiting for him to be mayor because I want to come to the airport here and get a free lift into the city. And damn it, I don't want to pay these hotel bills anymore. It's ridiculous. I need free, and then I want free food.
You're right.
It's fair. I should get all that for free.
You're not going to be getting things for free.
He promised it to me. He promised it to me.
I think you're out of the income range.
I am going to hold him accountable for my free stuff. So I'm waiting for him to come in. I'll be the first person to say, where's my free? And then we'll see what happens.
Sounds good.
It's fair.
I can't wait.
Can I leave you with one statistic?
Sure.
So we were talking about wind. So idiot Zoran Mamdani doesn't want fossil fuel. So New York has signed a contract with Empire Wind and Sunrise Wind, that the weighted average that they agreed to pay for electricity is $150 per megawatt hour. That is more than 4 times the average grid cost paid normally over the last year. 4x.
Wow. That doesn't sound affordable to me.
No. So that's what they're wishing on you, these politicians. They want you to pay 4 times what you currently pay for your electricity. Good luck, New York City.
That's not free.
I live in dirty Jersey, and I'm happy.
Sounds like some pretty bad negotiating. I could have done better than that.
Yes, you could have.
That's ridiculous.
I could have done better than that.
Wow.
Yes, you could have.
I wonder which politician signed that deal. Get the whacking stick out.
Name it, and it's a Democrat.
We don't know for sure.
What is the...
We don't know for sure.
No, it's definitely a Democrat.
Trillions of dollars get paid to drug companies, and you still have lousy health care. Obamacare is horrible health care. We want it to go to the people, and then let the people go out and buy their own health care, and they'll do great.
That's President Trump with details on his plan to reform health care and give money back to consumers. This comes as Congress faces a tight deadline ahead of Obamacare subsidies expiring and rising insurance premiums to come. The Senate Help Committee expected to hold a hearing today, making health care affordable again. Senators set to vote on competing health care bills next week. Joining me now is Missouri Congressman Mark Alford. Congressman, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. You've got 11 legislative days left before the Obamacare subsidies expire. And we see both parties really doubtful that a bipartisan deal could be within reach. I guess the Speaker said he wasn't going to bring this for a vote, right? What's the story in the House?
Well, I don't know what the Speaker's plans are exactly on this. I did hear the president yesterday. We've got to fix what the Democrats broke, and that is Obamacare. Look, these subsidies that are due to expire, as you said, at the end of this year, that deadline was set by the Democrats. And so now we've got to go in and clean up their mess. It's a shame that we have to do that, but I do think we have a responsibility as we are in the majority to do something with health care. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like. It's going to mean, I think, returning a lot of the money to the people and not going into the insurance companies. I think that's a lot of where the fault lies. No one's ever talking, though, about how do we bring down the cost of health care in general. And that's something I'm hoping that our committees of jurisdiction, Ways and Means, and Energy and Commerce are going to concentrate on. And how do we reduce the cost for the consumer?
So when you say reduce the cost for the consumer and fix this mess that you were inheriting, you're talking about a plan that's coming from the White House, Congressman. Do you expect that there will be a vote on the Obamacare subsidies in the House or no?
I really don't have any idea at this time. That'll be up to Leader Scalise and Mike Johnson, our Speaker. All I know is that the Democrats broke this. I think we're going to be able to clean up the mess in some form or fashion. I don't know what the timeline is going to be on that, whether it's by the end of the year. Look, we've got another deadline facing us, Maria. We have 23 legislative days till January 30th, where the continuing resolution expires, and we could be facing another Democrat shutdown of the government. I hope that's not the case. We're going to try to tie, I think the Senate is, some of these remaining 9 appropriation bills in some sort of minibus, send them over to the House. We've got to get that done as well so that we can avoid another Democrat shutdown, as they created a lot of pain for the American people.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, are we really going to go through this again? I mean, you've got to get as much work done as possible so that you could ensure that they don't, your colleagues on the left don't have that weapon to shut down the government again at the end of January.
You're absolutely right. We are working hard on that. We worked very hard to get all 12 appropriation bills out of committee before the end of the fiscal year. We got 3 off the House floor, volleyed those over to the Senate. They came back attached to that continuing resolution earlier this year that reopened the government after the Schumer shutdown. It is our responsibility to get the rest of these passed. Again, I think it's going to come back in some sort of minibus, maybe defense and labor H tied together, labor and health, as they typically are. But we cannot afford another government shutdown. And I think that's where the Democrats are headed. They want chaos in our country, and we're not going to allow it.
That's incredible, actually. Look, Congressman, I want to move on to this other issue that Congresswoman Elise Stefanik is bringing up. She's accusing the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, of blocking her provision in the annual defense bill. This provision that Elise Stefanik wants in there would require the FBI to notify Congress when it opens counterintelligence investigations into federal candidates or sitting congressmen. Stefanik wrote this on X. Unless this provision is added back into the bill to prevent illegal political weaponization of the intelligence community in our elections, I am a hard no. Congressman, the House is expected to vote on this annual defense policy bill as soon as next week. And Elise Stefanik writes, Republicans have the House, Senate, and the White House, yet the deep state is alive and well, with the Speaker getting rolled by House Democrats who are attempting to block my provision that requires congressional disclosure when the FBI opens counterintelligence investigations into presidential and federal candidates seeking office. Are you for that or against it?
I'm for Elise's base bill. I think she and Mike Johnson will work that out. I think they probably need to have a face-to-face meeting and sit down and talk about this. Mike Johnson is very willing to talk with people to work things out. Elise Stefanik is a great member. I have the utmost respect for her. I applaud her effort in running for governor there of the great state of New York, and I think she'll be successful, especially after Mondami's win of a socialist to be the New York mayor. But again, this is going to take some, I think, some face-to-face conversations between the Speaker and Elise Stefanik. Hopefully that can happen very soon.
Why would the Speaker be against this? I mean, I understand that he wants a clean,
I don't know.
He wants a clean bill. But, you know, Stefanik writes, in a March 2017 open hearing, my questions to former FBI Director Jim Comey began the unraveling of the Russia hoax, when Comey admitted that he did not follow proper notification procedures with his illegal opening of Crossfire Hurricane, a criminal act that can never happen again. Why would anyone be against putting that in there?
Well, I can't speak for the Speaker, Mike Johnson. I do know that Elise has a very principled bill that she wants attached to the NDAA. I agree with this. I think we need to have transparency, especially when it comes to a rogue Justice Department that has been in the past, that we should have transparency in that matter. But again, that's going to be up to Speaker Johnson. It could be that it could halt the progress of the NDAA coming back over, which we need to get passed.
Right.
We've got to get the National Defense Authorization Act passed, and we've got to get our defense appropriation bills passed so that we can properly fund our defense and so that these new projects can get started. We've got pacing threats from communist China, Venezuela, and of course Vladimir Putin with his illicit war on Ukraine. We've got to make sure that we have adequate defense.
Yeah, and to be fair, that's basically what Mike Johnson told me when I asked him, look, why won't you put something else in about senators being able to sue, you know, if they were tracked, if they were spied on. He said, look, you're right, there's weaponization, but we need a clean CR to get this over the finish line. And that was his answer to that. And here's the Speaker with me just recently saying that, look, we got to get the business done so that we don't see another shutdown. But, Congressman, I want to get your take on President Trump's ideas of this initiative for children, the Trump accounts. The Treasury is going to contribute $1,000 to start, and it's all supplemented by this $6.25 billion donation from Michael and Susan Dell. The president also addressed affordability in that cabinet meeting yesterday, even floated the idea of eliminating income tax at some point. Watch this.
Next year is projected to be the largest tax refund season ever, and we're going to be giving back refunds out of the tariffs because we've taken in literally trillions of dollars. And I believe that at some point in the not-too-distant future, you won't even have income tax to pay because the money we're taking in is so great, it's so enormous, that you're not going to have income tax to pay.
Congressman, your reaction?
Well, look, I think these are targeted to help America, to regain affordability in America, which is the new buzzword, I guess, right now. Everyone wants lower prices. We don't want deflation, of course, in America, but people need to feel secure in their economy, and that's something that President Trump ran on. These tariffs are bringing in substantial money, some $400 billion so far. Yes, we need to pay down our debt. We have $38 trillion in debt. That can be done as well. That's going to be done when the interest rates start coming down even further than they are now, and we start rebuilding our economy from within. That's going to happen with the provisions of the One Big Beautiful Bill, which are going to kick in 23, 24 days now, January 1st, and we are going to start seeing this economy starting to cook. I think by the second quarter, it is going to be an economy like you have never seen before. That is going to restore confidence, not just in the Republican conference, but in Congress in general and America, and going to bring consumer confidence back up once again.
Very good. We have to remember that we haven't seen the impact of that bill just yet. The One Big Beautiful Bill plays out in 26. Congressman, good to see you. Thanks so much.
Good
Mark Alford on Capitol Hill. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
President Trump isn't just talking about tax relief. He's talking about rewriting the whole tax code.
Next year is projected to be the largest tax refund season ever, and we're going to be giving back refunds out of the tariffs because we've taken in literally trillions of dollars, and we're going to be giving a nice dividend to the people. The money we're taking in is so great, it's so enormous, that you're not going to have income tax to pay. Whether you get rid of it or just keep it around for fun or have it really low, much lower than it is now, but you won't be paying income tax.
Welcome to the Big Money Show. I'm Dagan McDowell, along with my co-hosts, Taylor Riggs, Brian Benberg, Jackie DeAngelis, and with us for this hour, Great Hill Capital Chairman Thomas Hayes. Great to see you. Not only is the White House promising Americans a lucrative tax refund season, it says, the president, that they can expect Americans tariff dividend checks as well. But no more federal income taxes? Feels like a pipe dream. The president insists that his tariff windfall is big enough to fund the government, cut the deficit, and still put money back in the pockets of voters. Critics will argue, it's not just critics, we don't need to put it in the frame of critics. I'll argue that the math doesn't add up. This is a classic President Trump, be big, be bold, force Washington to defend a status quo that most Americans cannot stand. And with inflation expected to ease in 2026, we could be entering phase 2 of an affordability push. So while Americans dread tax season, it may soon become the most wonderful time of the year. Brian Bremberg, to you first on this. I'm holding a big announcement in my mouth.
You're not pregnant.
There is something to be said. No. There is something to be said, though. Why half of the country doesn't pay any income taxes.
True.
So why have this vast monstrosity of forcing them to fill out paperwork?
Oh, yeah.
And file, and then you get a refund. And there's something that he is piecing together here, and it's not quite coming out. But
well,
I sense something.
I sense things too. Look, I want to just stop and celebrate the fact that in the White House you have a president saying, let's get rid of the income tax, because you would not have had that under the previous president. They wanted to double down. Actually, they wanted to make it worse by doing wealth taxes. So I like the idea of no income tax. I like better, and you've mentioned this before, because tariffs are sort of this, I like a consumption tax better than an income tax, because I'd rather tax consumption than work and investment. So the president is putting out, I think, a great idea in principle. I don't think it's going to happen. I agree, it's not going to happen. It's not realistic. I don't think, and again, this is sort of my non-lawyer analysis of what's going to happen with the Supreme Court. I don't think a lot of his IEEPA tariffs are going to stand. I don't think that's a big problem for him, because he's got other ways to do it. But I do like the one thing he's doing here that I think is super important, because they haven't done enough this year, is they're saying, wait until you start to get your refunds from the big, beautiful law, the big, beautiful bill, because it is going to be big. You're going to feel it. And it's going to change your whole tax picture for the coming year, which is why you got guys like Kevin Hassett and Scott Bessent saying 2026 is going to be a bonanza. So from the president's lips to God's ears, no income tax. I don't know if the Lord's going to answer that prayer just now, but it's a great idea.
Can I do the math here for everybody?
Yes.
Okay, so federal receipts.
I'll hold up this handy chart.
For the Department of Treasury.
Oh, I can see that perfectly.
It's a little small for me. But the federal receipts overall were almost $5 trillion in fiscal year 2024. Of that, the individual aspect of it was $2.43 trillion. So if we're talking about tariff revenue right now of roughly $300 billion for the year, no, the math doesn't add up. But Brian, I agree with you. This sentiment is there that the president wants to do as much as he can for working Americans. And what I love about this, and we talk about it, is that it is work incentivizing. Go to work, you can make money, you can keep more of it. And that is what people want to hear. You know, we talk about handouts, we talk about entitlements. Even Joe Biden said, you know, job is your dignity. And that is important to people. I don't think most people really want to sit on the couch and take these entitlements, but they're a little bit lost and they're a little bit stuck. So what the president wants to do is incentivize them not only to work, but create a growth engine in the economy where the opportunity to work is there. And that is what's happening here. Now, if they're right, the administration, and in 2026, you have a gangbuster year because people are getting their refunds from no tax on tips and the new policies that were implemented in the big, beautiful law, then that's going to contribute to the growth engine as well. Remember, I said this is a wheel. It's got a lot of different spokes, this economic policy overall. As these spokes come together and that wheel starts to move, I think you're going to really see something amazing. And the haters are going to have to turn around and admit that they were wrong on this.
3 quick points, and I want you to weigh in on this. I mentioned this last week. A lovely man in my building the other day came up to me and he said, can you tell me more about no tax on overtime? Because I'm working Thanksgiving and I'm doing double time and I'm working a little bit extra and putting an extra shift. How does that work in my paycheck? And so we kind of went down the math, and I kind of alluded to, like, you'll get a lot of money back when you start filing taxes. And he looked at me and goes, ooh, that sounds good, right? I could have that money. I could deserve that, or really it would be nice to have. the other part to this is this sort of folds into the Michael Dell announcement when we talk about income taxes. We joke that our alma maters call us and they ask for us to donate to the foundation. And my response is always, I can't because the government's already taken half my money. Sorry, I have no money left.
Actually, they do call them.
If the federal government were to lower my taxes, I would bet, the same way Michael Dell just bet, that they would give more money directly to people, to charities, to foundations, to whatnot. So I would have control over how my money is spent, and I would give it back to those in need much more than I do now, because the government is, I think, more wasteful in their resources and how they distribute money than I would be personally. But here's the other end of that, Brian. I just want to challenge you.
Okay.
Do you really want a consumption tax? If our economy
that was
is
the part I wasn't
60
into.
or 70% based on the consumer, that's how our GDP is.
Yeah.
If that's what's
I'm
powering,
saying no income tax.
But if that's what's powering the economy, is a consumption tax, which is what the lower income
Consumption doesn't power our economy. Production does.
Yep.
Okay.
And the income tax penalizes work.
Okay.
The consumption tax penalizes consumption or buying of things. You want to, if you have a consumption tax, you create incentives for work. And what President Trump did with the tariffs, I've said this over and over, it's a sliver of a value-added tax.
Yeah.
It is a sliver of a consumption tax. So there's great economic theory that undergirds what the president is doing. He won't say it.
Right.
Brian, knock it off.
Wait, but we already pay sales tax.
What she said, Taylor. What she said.
Guys, serious. We already pay sales tax. In New York, it's a little bit over 8%, right? So you see that when you make purchases, at least of clothing, for example, over a certain amount, or of food and beverages and all those other things we consume. So how much more can you add to that where you would need to offset what we were talking about, the trillions of dollars that you think people can absorb? I guess he's looking to cut on the other end, so you would have more money, like Taylor's suggesting. But I don't know. There's got to be a balance.
You have a federal government where the bottom 50% of federal taxpayers only pay $63 billion in annual taxes. That is less than 2 months of tariffs. That they're not paying anything. And we need to cut healthcare spending, but instead we just got checks for babies and Obamacare super subsidies. We're Denmark without the value-added tax. That is the definition of insanity.
I think this is all about direction, not destination. We know the math doesn't add up, but it's the idea of pro-growth policies. And furthermore, this is really just an advertisement to the Supreme Court. If you unwind these tariffs, I'm just going to pay it out as dividends, baby. If you keep it, I'm going to pay down debt. So we can pay down the debt one of two ways. We can have massive growth through handing out these dividend checks, in which case we're going to inflate it away. Or we can be responsible about it and keep the tariff income coming in, and we will use that money to pay down debt. Up to you, Mr. and Mrs. Supreme Court. That's the way it's going to be. But the name of the game here is people are afraid of inflation, they're afraid of yields, and it's recency bias. What we had with COVID inflation was a unique situation of ongoing checks and supply chain disruption, and people locked in their house with nothing else to do but order goods. That's not going to be the case this time, predominantly because of the most important policy, which is the energy policy. You keep energy low. The Saudis respect this administration. They have been towing the line and keeping production up. If oil stays down, they can get away with murder. They can hand out dividend checks till the cows come home. The supply chain is not going to be disrupted, and we are going to grow above trend, just like we did post-World War II. The last time we had debt to GDP at 120%, we basically grew our way and inflated a little bit, 3 to 5% inflation. By 1957, debt to GDP dropped to 63% from growth and letting the economy run hot. Like Larry Kudlow always says, let it rip. And that's exactly what this administration is going to do with the dream team of Hassett and Bessent.
That's your prediction.
I think that's the way it's going to go.
He's
going to go as low. He's going to be like.
We shall discuss this
Yeah, the getting away with murder, that was figurative.
Welcome back. A key vote on Obamacare tax credits set for next week, but a bombshell new report from the Government Accountability Office uncovers widespread fraud surrounding the ACA advanced premium tax credit subsidies. Federal exchanges reportedly approved fake beneficiaries, and they paid them the premium subsidies. In 2023, 58,000 people who were dead were still receiving payments up to $21 billion. They're going to overpayments or ineligible enrollees. 29,000 cases involve the same Social Security number used in multiple subsidized plans. Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan, one of the lawmakers who formally requested this investigation, will join me in the 8 a.m. hour with more details on that, as well as the subpoena that he sent for Jack Smith. But first, let's talk with Kentucky Congressman Andy Barr, a member of the House Financial Services Committee. Congressman, it's good to see you. Thank you so much for joining here. What can you tell us about any conversation underway about Obamacare subsidies as they are set to expire at year end?
Well, Maria, President Trump and Republicans are for lowering the cost of health care. We always have. But the central irony of the government shutdown we just went through is that it was largely motivated by a Democrat temper tantrum over the failure of Obamacare. It was a breathtaking admission by Democrats that Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, is in fact unaffordable. And I'm concerned about just simply continuing to mask the true cost of Obamacare with more subsidies that just simply subsidize premium inflation. If you look at the subsidies, if you look at the premiums in the exchanges, in the Obamacare exchanges, those premiums for Americans in the exchanges have risen over 60% faster, higher than premiums in the employer-sponsored system. So Obamacare doesn't work, and subsidizing that broken system is not the answer. And as you pointed out, we've found through studies that the subsidies in the exchanges are rife with waste, fraud, and abuse. One study says that $47 billion of improper payments with these subsidies. So we need to move to a patient-centered reform system that harnesses the power of competition and choice and gives power back to patients and forces more competition in the system. That will lower the cost of health care.
Well, how significant is that fraud related to these Obamacare exchanges?
Well, it's very significant. Really? According to the study, I mean, billions of dollars, $47 billion of improper payments as a result of these subsidies. There's no verification of eligibility in the way the system is set up. So at minimum, if we're going to renew any of these subsidies or enhance subsidies, we need major reforms to ensure that the American taxpayer is protected.
Let me switch gears, ask you about foreign policy for a moment, Congressman, because U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are expected to meet with Ukrainian officials in Miami after a marathon 5-hour meeting yesterday with Vladimir Putin. It did not yield any major breakthroughs yesterday, but President Trump says Putin still wants to make a deal. Watch this.
Their impression was that he would like to see the war ended. I think he'd like to get back to dealing a more normal life. I think he'd like to be trading with the United States of America, frankly, instead of, losing thousands of soldiers a week.
Congressman, your thoughts?
Well, if anyone can get to peace, if anyone can negotiate a peace deal, it's President Trump. Putin invaded Ukraine under Joe Biden's watch, and this would have never happened if President Trump's peace through strength strategy had been in place. Weakness invites aggression, and that's what Joe Biden's policies did. The chaotic retreat from Afghanistan, the unilateral pullback on the sanctions on Nord Stream 2, the pipeline, all of that invited Putin's invasion. What President Trump is showing is strength, and he's putting Ukraine and the Europeans in a position to negotiate a lasting and durable peace by closing the energy loophole in the sanctions, by helping NATO get to 5% GDP on their defense spending, negotiating this deal on critical minerals in Ukraine, which would actually restore a significant level of deterrence. All of those measures, and by the way, denuclearizing Iran, taking action in Iran, believe me, Putin took notice of that. And all of those measures put President Trump in a position to negotiate a lasting peace And if anyone can do it, President Trump can do it.
Well, you know, we're certainly watching how this plays out, and the president has been focused on peace deals. I mean, this would be enormous if, in fact, we saw him actually help to end this war. But it doesn't feel like Putin really wants to end this.
Well, it doesn't. It doesn't, and his demands are unreasonable, asking for major territorial concessions that are larger than even what Russia controls right now, and including the entirety of the Donbass. I think what looks like peace would be a demilitarization of the Donbass.
Yeah.
And also security guarantees for Ukraine, obviously. That is critically important. But President Trump is, through a restoration of peace through strength and through a restoration of deterrence, he's putting the Europeans and the Ukrainians in a position where they can actually achieve long-term and lasting peace. And again, if anyone can do it, President Trump can.
Congressman, your committee, the House Financial Services Committee, issued a 53-page final staff report on how the Biden administration debanked digital assets. I want to get your take on this. And I spoke with the House Financial Services Committee Chairman, French Hill, about it yesterday. Here's what he told us. Watch.
This report identifies all the ways led by Gary Gensler, who was chairman of the SEC, the bank supervisors led by Michael Barr, then vice chairman of the Fed, and others, to systematically debank legal businesses in the United States engaged in the digital asset innovative space. And this was terrible for American competitiveness, and it led me during the course of the Biden administration to offer my FIT 21 bill, which is now the Clarity Act, which gives the rules of the road, clear market structure road rules, so that people know how to innovate. They can count on the federal government for not debanking them and actually encouraging the use of innovation blockchain technology inside financial services.
But why would the administration, the Biden administration, want to de-emphasize this?
Well, I think they took the same approach that the Obama administration is, that when they, in their privileged point of view, believes that somehow that this innovation is a bad thing, they wanted to see it blocked from access to the financial system.
Congressman, your reaction, and how do you see this playing out in the coming years?
Well, President Trump and I and Chairman Hill and Congressman Huizenga and others on the House Financial Services Committee and Chairman Tim Scott of South Carolina, we're working together to end the weaponization of finance in America. No American individual or business should be debanked because of their political or religious views or because of the lawful business that they're engaged in. Yes, crypto has been discriminated against by the Biden administration, Gary Gensler and others. But now we have a new sheriff in town, President Trump, his bank regulators, Jonathan Gould, Michelle Bowman, Travis Hill, and we are ending the practice of debanking, not just crypto, but also firearms, fossil energy, and other lawful businesses. This is progress. Yeah, it's pretty incredible that the industries they didn't like, they basically weaponized the agencies against them. Congressman, we're going to keep watching all of that. Thanks so much for being here. Andy Barr joining us. All right, we'll see you soon. We'll be right back.
The media. It is heavily critical of Republican leadership in the House, and they're not too happy with the GOP as a whole either. Outlets like the New York Times, NBC, Axios, they're specifically taking aim at Speaker Johnson, who just happens to be in New York, and he's sitting next to me in our New York studios. Sorry about the cold weather, Mr. Speaker.
Glad to be here. However, we got a lot of House Republicans in town for our annual Bright Lights Big City celebration, so great time to be here.
So how are you going to keep your party in line when you have a minuscule majority?
Well, this is what we do every day. We have one of the smallest margins in U.S. history. There's 220 House Republicans. And on any given day, 2 or 3 or 4 people may be upset or frustrated about something. They didn't get all their preferences or they have different ideas. The media, the way it works on Capitol Hill, as you know, is they zero in on a couple of voices and they try to amplify it to divide the Republican Party. Because if we stay unified, there is absolutely nothing that we can't achieve. And we've already demonstrated that this Congress. We've had one of the most productive Congresses in the history of the institution.
Do you need the president to get on the phone to some reluctant GOP members in the House and say, come on, come on?
He's been very helpful at a couple of junctures along the way where we've had big legislation, the one big beautiful bill, the working families tax cut, other things where you had 2 or 3 or 4 holdouts, which I can't afford. Now, remember, in previous years, speakers had 25, 30, 40-seat majorities. I have a razor-thin majority. I have to get every single Republican on most days, and so it takes a lot of work, but we're going to get there.
Separate issue. The Supreme Court says Texas can use newly redrawn congressional maps in the midterms next year. So, Mr. Speaker, that's a win for Republicans by the looks of it. How many extra seats does that mean for the GOP?
Well, I would say it's a win for common sense and the rule of law. What the court finally affirmed is what we've known all along. Texas had a legal right to redraw the lines and to do it in a fair way that reflects their population, and that's what the court has said. There's many other states in various stages of that right now. About 14 different states are redrawing lines and in various stages of litigation. So we don't know what the final number will be. I believe our party will net seats at the end of that. But here's the thing. I've got to win with whatever maps are produced, and we will. We have a great record to run on, great candidates. We're excited about the midterms.
Governor DeSantis was with me earlier today, and we're going to run the tape a little later on the show. And he says, yeah, they're moving forward in Florida with redistricting. Sure. That's what they want to do. So if you add Texas and Florida and the other states which will move in favor of Republican seats,
yes,
you're going to pick up an extra 10 or 20?
I don't know if it'll be that large because we've got blue states doing the same. But when it all sorts out, we'll net seats. Again, I liked the maps even before the current redistricting battles began. As we sit here right now, there are 13 House Democrats sitting in districts that Trump won. There's another 21 of them sitting in districts he came within 5 points of winning. Conversely, there's only 3 House Republicans seated today in a Kamala Harris district. So what that means is we have a lopsided map. It's a very favorable map for us, the best we had in about 30 years, which means we play offense. We're going to flip blue seats to red because we're going to run on this extraordinary record of what we've done.
Redistricting is basic, raw, nasty politics.
It is. And
that's what it is.
And some of us regret all that, but it is what it is. And at the end of the day, it's going to benefit the American people.
President Trump's going to Pennsylvania Tuesday, I believe, to talk about his economic agenda ahead of the midterms. Do the Republicans have a messaging problem with affordability?
No, it's just that we've had so many things to message. I mean, it's a blessing and a curse. The big, beautiful bill was aptly named because there was so much in it, so much policy, and there were so many things to message all at once. So you had different Republicans out talking about different things, which they need to do in their districts, but it made it appear as though the message wasn't unified. We are laser focused on affordability, bringing down the cost of living. The president's agenda is going to be aggressive, and this Congress is going to deliver that. So as we go into the midterm cycle next year, you'll hear everything focused on that issue.
Time's running short. What are you going to do about Obamacare healthcare subsidies?
We've been working on this for months, and Republicans are the party that are going to bring it down. Remember who broke American healthcare? It's the Democrats. The Unaffordable Care Act is 15 years old now. When they passed it, they said it was going to bring premiums down. Did exactly the opposite.
Will you do any kind of compromise to make sure that people don't face a spike in premiums?
Well, every day in Congress is some sort of compromise. But I'll tell you, we put together the component pieces of what we know can bring down premiums, and you'll see some of this being rolled out in the next few days, probably by mid next week. Republicans are going to deliver, and it's only our party, Stuart, that is going to bring down premiums, increase access to care, and quality of care. Democrats, all they do is break the systems and then subsidize the broken systems. We have different ideas, and it will benefit the American people.
Obamacare is broken, has been since day one.
Of course.
Do you have the ability to really reform it? I mean,
we have to reform
do this?
We have to reform it. I wish that we could rip it out from the roots and start over, but it's so deeply ingrained, it's sinister in that way. But it has broken the system, and what we have to do is go in and reform it. We have lots of ideas, expanding HSAs, the cost-sharing reduction models, reforming PBMs. I mean, we could go on and on. We will. We pull all that together in one plan. We draw consensus around it, and Republicans are on a mission to fix health care.
So you reform Obamacare if you can. Yes. What about the Minnesota welfare fraud problem, $1 billion? Does that imply to you that you've got to reform the welfare system as well?
Absolutely. And in the big, beautiful bill, by the way, we did that. We put work requirements in for SNAP benefits, which is long overdue. We reformed Medicaid, and we reduced fraud, waste, abuse in that program. The CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, says that it will save $185 billion for taxpayers and bring down health care premiums. We have many more reforms like that. The big, beautiful bill was infused with reducing fraud, waste, and abuse provisions provisions, and we have much more ahead of us, and that will be an aggressive part of the agenda in the next year as well.
Do you work 18 hours a day?
More. And I have to, because
No,
President
I'm
Trump
serious.
works 21 hours a day.
I see you on TV all the time, always surrounded by hostile media people.
Oh, yeah.
And your fellow,
It's a really
other
fun
Republicans
job,
having a go
Stuart.
at you.
No, look, we accept this duty humbly. It's an important time in American history.
Are you enjoying it? I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Speaker, but I've got to get to grips with the job you're doing.
I mean, I'm a wartime speaker in a real sense, and so it's not the most enjoyable job in the world, but I do love what we're doing. I love the team I work with. We have a unified Republican Party. If we didn't, Stuart, we would not have delivered on all the things that we have this year. There's much more ahead of us, and this team is excited about it. It is.
Just give us the tax cuts and the regulatory cuts.
That's right. Get ready.
Give
There's
us
more
some
coming.
reform.
There's more coming.
Just give it to
Absolutely.
us.
That's right. That's right.
Mr. Speaker, it's a real pleasure. Thank you very much
Thanks
for
a
being
lot.
with us.
Thanks a
Appreciate
lot.
it, sir.
Yes, sir.
She introduced the Meals Act. The 2020 Meals Act loosened oversight, enabled more than $250 million of fraudulent payouts, yet she says no idea of any wrongdoing.
I just hope there's a text chain, emails, some evidence linking Walz and her to knowledge, because you never, legally speaking, if they knew that something was happening, you've got to prove it. If they can say, I didn't know about it, and you can't prove it, they can get away with that. But even more than the legal aspect of this, I think about the voters in Minnesota. You've got to look at this and say, enough is enough already. But you know, Brian, I'll kick it to you because you're from Minnesota. I wonder how these kinds of leaders have gotten in their positions in the first place. I don't think your voter base is going to kick them out of office, which is just, I mean, it's atrocious. It's shocking to me, but the voter has power here. And if they do nothing about it, then it's on them.
Well, it's that voter power thing. Yeah, like around Minneapolis and St. Paul and the suburbs, I don't know. They always go for these guys.
Mm-hmm.
They go for Walz, and Omar's a smaller district that's voting for her, but it is voter power. And what's interesting, and I don't know where this is going to go, but one thing you should know is in Minnesota, people have been documenting all of this and digging into this far longer than we've been talking about it at the national level, and there's some really good work there. Omar, just to name one guy, so there's a guy named Guhad Hashi Saeed who was convicted in August of running a fake food site called Advanced Youth Athletic Development. Okay, whatever that was, definitely didn't serve food. But that guy worked for Omar in 2018 and 2020 as a campaign enforcer. So he made sure that folks in the Somali community in Minneapolis voted for her. Okay, that's the kind of people she consorted with. So what I would say is it's wintertime. There's ice in the lakes in Minnesota. It's very thin right now. When you get out on a thin ice, you might fall in. I think Omar's on very, very thin ice right now. And the more people dig into this, the more they're going to find she was not. This isn't just because programs were set up quickly.
Yeah.
No. Sorry. She knows the people who knew exactly how to crack the
But let's say that they were set up quickly.
They were, but that's not the problem. That's not the main problem.
But the spending stats are clear. I don't need an email to know that it went from one number to exponentially another number every single year, compounding over and over again.
Yeah.
And we had somebody on the other night that was a Republican state senator, and he wanted to put the blame on everybody else. And I would say, your blame's on you too. We argued with people and we told them what was happening. This is where a whistleblower has to come in and say, here are the stats, here are the numbers. I don't need any proof. The math is the math.
I think people get frustrated because I can't figure out the why. Sure, this person, all these people, Democrats in Minnesota, you included, Brian, hate capitalism, right? And so they just want to perpetuate fraud because they're not good stewards of money. There's no shareholder. You would vote, the taxpayer is the shareholder, but if the taxpayers are voting, they're not good stewards of money and they don't care. But what is the why? Just to perpetuate so that we can all be poor
Financial
and then go
illiteracy.
to socialism? But why? What is the argument against being a good steward of money?
I don't see
The
it
lack
that
of
way.
knowledge of how to do it.
I don't see it that way at all. I see them as thieves.
Yeah, it's
and
thievery.
it's just straight out. I want to line my pockets, and I want to go down the socialism route and take it away from you because, again, I want this elite. I want to be part of this elite dominating class that controls things. And Ilhan Omar brought all of these people, or allowed for, let me say, created a situation that allowed for them to swarm into Minnesota. And she is all about, you know, you're one of me. I want you to thrive. Whether
and so
that
I don't care about tax. I don't care about fraud.
But can I tell you what?
Yes.
So, like the voters, all these suburbs around the cities, these people who are not Somali in that community and voted for this stuff, one, they didn't know a ton about it. But two, when they found out about it, do you know what Tim Walz and Ilhan Omar and anybody who they might have asked about it would have said? You're a racist.
Yep.
You're a racist because you're blaming this on Somalis. And in 2020, 2021, and 2022, Minnesota, the home of the whole George Floyd debacle, that had a lot of currency. So that's one of the reasons it's taken so long for this to come out.
If you are accountable for taxpayer money, if you demand accountability, you're a bigot and a racist, according to these people. So let's reverse that. They're saying that embracing thievery, fomenting it, and recklessness is noble? No, it's not. And the American people are not idiots. This ends, they get into this job, they run for office because it's a grift. It's a grift for all the people. It is a con for all the people who got them elected and enriched them.
And the risk of taking it away is the risk of losing your seat.
So it's gone. This is a reckoning for all of these lying liberal grifters. We've hit $38 trillion in debt. You don't get any more money. No more crying hard times. And like the more that these media outlets, the regime media, write about the poor Somali community.
State comptrollers.
They came into this country. We brought them into this country, and these individuals stole from us. All of them who were behind this will rue the day. All of them.
And make no mistake also, there was some reporting recently about Ilhan Omar's own net worth. I mean, it's not like she hasn't been enriched in certain ways as well.
Done
I'm
quite
not
well for
necessarily
herself.
saying from the fraudulence, but that position of power hasn't been, let's say, it's been very lucrative for her.
Sure has.
You can't even marry your first cousin where I come from.
Welcome back. Good Friday morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'm Maria Bartiromo, and it is Friday, December 5th. It is 8:01 on the East Coast. President Trump hinting at his choice for the next chairman of the Federal Reserve in the Oval Office this week. Watch.
It's a great group. And I guess a potential Fed chair is here, too. I don't know. Are we allowed to say that? Potential. He's a respected person, that I can tell you. Thank you, Kevin.
White House National Economic Director Kevin Hassett seen as the frontrunner now to replace Jay Powell. The others, Kevin Warsh and Christopher Waller, are there, and we are all waiting on the answer. President Trump and the White House heavily criticized Jay Powell in recent months for not cutting interest rates fast enough to combat inflation and allow growth to resume in the economy. Joining me now, the man of the hour, White House National Economic Director Kevin Hassett. Kevin, it's great to see you this morning. Thank you so much for being here. And I want to get your take.
Maria, isn't it amazing to see the snow behind the White House with the Christmas decorations? I mean, oh my gosh, what a beautiful building, right?
Oh, yes, let's talk about the snow. Oh, you are great. That was great. Now, Kevin, look, congratulations. You've had an incredible career. We are expecting to hear the announcement from the commander-in-chief soon in terms of whether or not you'll take the Fed job. But I want to get your take on really the macro story and what the Fed is looking at or should be looking at. Interest interest rates this morning are up, Kevin, even though investors are pricing in an 87% chance that the Federal Reserve is going to cut interest rates next week at the December meeting. So what are you expecting for the meeting next week? And what do you believe the Fed should be focused on right now?
Right. Well, yeah, thanks again for having me back, Maria. The thing is that the data are missing a little bit, right? Because of the government shutdown, we went a couple of months without the kind of data that policymakers in the White House and policymakers at the Fed want to see to make sure that they've got a real strong handle on what's going on. We've seen some anecdotal reports, like through the ADP releases, that the job market might be weakening. At the same time, industrial production's at an all-time high. We've got GDP growth in the 4s for the last 2 quarters. And so, our expectation is that the government shutdown had a bigger negative effect on the economy than we expected, but we're going to have a bigger rebound in the first quarter. Against that backdrop, it's a good time for the Fed to cautiously reduce rates again, and that's what I expect that they're going to do.
Yeah, it's a great point to make because of this shutdown, but I think in the middle of all of this politicking around the shutdown, there's a new concern emerging about jobs. And it's really not about policy necessarily or about an economy that is slowing, because we know we're going to see a big impact from the big beautiful bill next year. But Kevin, it's really about AI and the fact that artificial intelligence is going to create efficiencies that will mean a loss of jobs. And look, I get that we're going to see new jobs. I know that all technology changes require new training and new jobs. But what is the White House's message on AI efficiencies? What is the plan to come up with the proper training for people to thrive in this new world?
Right. Well, the best part about what we're seeing in the evidence, and there's an institute, my friend Eric Brynjolfsson at Stanford, former colleague over there, has been studying these things like pretty much there's a new paper every month, that there's a lot of good news in the AI space. And I would say that the best news is the way to think about what AI and its agents can do is that they can act as if they're like the best coach you ever had for whatever job you have. And so while you're trying to figure out how do I make my boss happy, how do I do what it takes to make the firm successful, it's like you've got a coach right there with you every step of the way. And so we're seeing that, first of all, the coach is good at, you don't have to, learn a new software code, a new programming language to get this to happen. You've got a coach right there helping you be productive. Now, the second thing that we're seeing is that because of the really big increase in productivity, I think we could be looking at a 4% productivity increase next year, given how much acceleration there is in AI. Then what happens is that workers are able to produce as much stuff as the firm needs without having to hire a whole bunch of new people. And so we're seeing that recent college graduates are feeling stressed right now. But our expectation is that this is something that's going to work out quickly. The AI economy is moving much faster than the dot-com economy of the 90s. And the coaches that AI is producing are going to help make a lot of productive workers a heck of a lot of money. And the bottom line is that we're seeing that real wage growth is really high again this year after, being down $3,000 during the Biden administration. And so all this productivity is putting more money in people's pockets.
Yeah, the productivity is a great point. That is one of the major drivers here of things. And of course, we're expecting a big impact from the big beautiful bill in the early part of next year. So what are your expectations in terms of growth in the first and second quarter as we see things like expensing for businesses take effect, as well as all of the other new tax changes like no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, Kevin?
Right. Well, what we're going to see next year is, remember, when you have productivity growth like 3 or 4, then that's kind of the growth rate that you start at. And so that if you have a capital spending boom, President Trump talks about the $18 trillion in spending that's coming. We've been following groundbreaking in new big factories in the U.S. We're up to about 20 over the last 2 months. So there's a massive amount of momentum coming into next year. And against that backdrop, what we're seeing is that the people who have no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, all of those folks didn't have their forms changed this year because the IRS didn't have time to do it because we passed the bill in July. And so they're going to get huge tax refunds in the first and second half of the year that's going to feed the demand that you need from all this higher productivity from AI. And so I think that we're looking at one of the golden years in American economic history, provided that we don't get some kind of random black swan disruption.
So first and second quarter, what, 3%? What are you expecting in terms of growth?
I would be disappointed. 3. I would be disappointed with 3. I
Wow.
think it could easily be 1% higher.
And of course, that's what.
And without inflation, because it's all supply side stuff. Right? Think of all the factories, the groundbreakings, all that stuff increases supply, puts downward pressure on prices. Productivity booms, by the way, Maria. Sorry, I'm speaking up. The snowblower guys are going back and forth.
I appreciate it. Yes, I know. I see that.
So the other thing is that you can remember back in the 90s, there was a period when I worked with Alan Greenspan that was parallel, where because computers were starting to increase productivity, that there were a lot of people at the Federal Reserve that wanted to raise rates because unemployment was so low. And then Greenspan was, no, we don't have to do that because this is a productivity boom that's a supply shock that puts downward pressure on prices. And so he kept rates low in the 90s. And that's when we had the 3-4 years of amazing economic growth because the Fed didn't take away the punch bowl. And I think that given the data that we're seeing, the AI is a more powerful productivity source than the computer. That kind of episode, of course, you got to watch the data closely all the way through. That kind of episode is possible that we'll have it again.
And I'm so happy you mentioned Alan Greenspan. I love the fact that you worked with Greenspan. And one of the things that Alan Greenspan used to say all the time as chairman of the Fed was there's a real wealth effect as well. So do you read into that wealth effect today? Because look at where we are in the stock market. I don't think you can, ignore the fact that the stock market has been in a melt-up scenario all year on President Trump's term. And does that enable people to feel better and put more money to work in terms of investing and consumption?
Right. It's all actually simultaneous. So the people who actually own the S&P 500 say they're really happy because they've got more wealth and they can feel comfortable buying things. But the reason the S&P 500 is up is that the customers of all those companies are buying a lot of their things and the companies are very profitable. We just had really, I think, the best positive surprise, earnings surprise quarter that we've ever seen in the last quarter because Americans are out there, living their lives to the fullest and helping firms be profitable and helping wages and wage growth go up. And so it's really like a very magic formula that was only disrupted really by the government shutdown. And now that we've got that behind us, that I think the sky's the limit.
Now, of course, you mentioned the president talking about the $18 trillion in investment that is coming into America as President Trump lures money from all over the world into the U.S. But we're also worried about the Supreme Court decision coming up. Back in April, there was all this hysteria about the president's tariffs. Now, people are afraid they're going to go away because it's so significant. The money raised already close to $300 billion. We're now in the window of when this decision can come any day. The Supreme Court held oral arguments on the legality of President Trump's use of the IEEPA, the emergency to impose tariffs. That happened exactly 1 month ago. Have you heard from SCOTUS yet?
No, we haven't heard. I think we'll all hear it at the same time, but we're highly confident in really two things. The first thing is that we're right on the law. The president has the right to declare an emergency. Like, think about all the hundreds of thousands of people that have died because of fentanyl, for example. He has full authority to declare an emergency, and he also has full authority to regulate trade if he sees there's an emergency. And how else are you going to regulate trade but through a tariff or a quota? And so we feel like on the law we're very, very strong. But even if the Supreme Court disagrees with us, we have a backup plan that'll get these things in place right away. Jamison Greer and Howard Lutnick and Secretary Bessent have been talking about it, day and night, as you know. And so, we're going to win either way. The American people are going to win either way.
Well, I spoke to President Trump about it, and he made the point that, look, we're going to have to pay back money if this doesn't go our way. Here's the president with me just 2 months ago. Watch.
What is your backup plan should the Supreme Court decision go against you on the tariffs and the emergency
Well, I'll have to figure something out. I don't want to even think about it. We're doing so well to think about it. If that happened, we'd have to pay back money. So if anything would happen with that, that would mean they're allowed to use tariffs and we're not. If they took away, this is national security, if they took away tariffs, then they've taken away our national security.
So I know that you're confident the decision goes your way, Kevin, but if it doesn't, you said you have backup plans. What is it? Is it like Section 301 or 232 or what?
Exactly, 232s, 301s, that all those numbers that, you know, it's kind of make your head spin sometimes. But the bottom line is the president is exactly right about, you know, during your clip right there, that if the Supreme Court says, hey, you got to take the $300 billion and you got to refund it, it's a massive economic disruption. And then moving forward, we have lots of plans for 301s and 232s so that we can reproduce what we've done with other authorities. But he is correct that you're looking at a really massive disruption, a massive disruption that the Supreme Court needs to take seriously as we look forward to the decision.
Yeah. Now, yesterday or this week, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has been pushing for new Federal Reserve regulations requiring regional bank presidents live in their districts for 3 years. I want to get your take on this because the secretary said that the Fed board could potentially veto regional Fed presidents if implemented. This rule gives Washington more sway, certainly in fiscal policy. Is the president planning to veto Reserve Bank presidents who have not lived in their district for at least 3 years, Kevin?
You know, I've not discussed that with him, but I think that what Secretary Bessent said is exactly consistent with the 1913 Act that created the Federal Reserve, that the reason we have all these regional feds is that we want to make sure that we have a federalist system where the different regions of the country that have different concerns, like it could be a place where you care a lot about agriculture or where you care a lot about energy, that those places have a voice at the table. And the unfortunate thing about the current design of the Federal Reserve is that the only folks who always get a vote on interest rates are the people who live in Washington and the people who live in New York. And it's something that Secretary Bessent and I have been talking about. And I think it wouldn't require anybody to go in and fire anybody who's there now. But going forward, you know, being respectful of the original design of the Fed, which helps provide the independence you need because you've got regional variance across like who's actually making the decisions. I think it's a good idea.
So, I mean, would it derail the expected February approval of the 12 regional Reserve Bank presidents to 5-year terms?
That's something I've not discussed with everybody yet.
Kevin, let me move on to the president's affordability push. He's going on a trip, and he's going to be traveling the country beginning next week to really tout some of these economic wins. What do you want to say to those people who talk about affordability being a real challenge and the fact that they understand President Trump trying to rein in prices, but there are some prices that are still higher than what they want?
Right. Well, we understand why people are still frustrated. We understand that, like, if a typical person buying a home saw their monthly mortgage payment go up by more than $1,000, grocery prices, a typical family's grocery bag went from about $400 to $525 a month. And so all that happened under Joe Biden. And now we're getting inflation under control. We're getting wage growth to grow again. People's spending power is up about $1,200 so far this year after dropping $3,000 under Joe Biden. And so we're making progress, but it's going to take a little bit more time to get the hole that Biden dug to be completely filled. But we're going to do it. We're highly confident we're going to do it. And the numbers that you and I have been talking about this morning highlight why people should be so optimistic that we'll be successful.
Absolutely. And, you know, I wonder if you're going to see this road, the Housing Act, part of the NDAA. I mean, housing is one of the areas that people are concerned about because of where mortgage rates are. So will we see that enactment, and that would be positive for manufacturing and housing, right?
Right. It's a really strong first move in housing, but the president has basically instructed all of his advisors to work overtime on a second round of things to make housing more affordable. In fact, we've got meetings today about that. But yeah, we think that Congress has got a lot of really good ideas. You know, Senator Scott has been pushing, and that we absolutely think that it'd be great if that got passed. But we're not done making housing more affordable.
So what should we expect from the president traveling the country this next week and beyond, talking about some of his economic wins, Kevin?
Well, I mean, there have been so many wins to talk about that I think it's just going to be a great time. He's the best communicator I've ever seen. There's going to be a great time for him to go out there and just talk about, like, we could say one thing that we've got 18 trillion in new factories being built, but now we've actually got the groundbreakings that we can report on. And so I think that people are going to be really impressed with the progress that we're making, and it's going to be very, very impressive data as well. And so I think that because the president is on fast forward and he's solving, it seems, all the world's problems, stopping wars and everything else, that that it's time now to spend a little bit of time reminding people about all the progress we've made on the economy, and that's what he's going to do.
While also rolling back some of the Biden-era fuel efficiency regulations, making cars more affordable. This was the topic this week to try to increase production, right? The president launched a nationwide affordability push, announcing the creation of the Trump accounts for newborns. Kevin, I got to tell you, I love this story. I love this idea. Having kids understand saving and investing from a very young age. How significant will this be on American families?
I think that both of the things you mentioned are amongst the most significant things that the president, looking back, will think about as his great accomplishments. Because what he did with the Trump account is he made it so that every kid, when they're born in America, basically gets a share of the pie. They get a piece of the action. They get money put into a broad-based index fund so that they get to feel like they're part of the capitalist system. They're part of the economy that's making us all so rich. And not only that, but they'll be saying, oh, I own $50 worth of Apple, like when they can look at the companies in the index funds themselves. And then we get Michael Dell, who comes through. And what President Trump had us do, by the way, Maria, it was underappreciated, is that we didn't just make accounts for the people who were born this year. We made accounts for everybody who's 18 and under, so that these accounts would be available for all children in America. But we put the $1,000 in every year for the newborns. And Michael Dell came out with $6.2 billion that he said, you know what? For everybody 10 and under, I'm going to give them all $250. And he's doing that to 25 million people. And since Michael Dell did that, we've got people, wealthy people from all over the country ringing our phones off the hook saying, hey, we want to do that too. And so it's a new model. It's a new platform for making society more just, but doing so voluntarily with the well-earned profits of America's philanthropists.
I think it's just terrific. I really do. Look,
really
I'm reading a Piper Sandler report this morning, Kevin, and the analyst there says tariff revenues are coming in light. We think the deficit is going to become an issue next year. Most estimates of the president's tariffs find the effective rate should be 17%, and this would imply $470 billion in new revenues. However, new tariff revenues have topped out at about $280 billion on an annualized basis. Your thoughts?
Right. Well, we've got a heck of a lot of tariff revenue coming in, and we've got a heck of a lot of production coming into the country. And so there'll be, as the data move forward, there'll be some, uncertainty about how much do we have to change our forecast for tariffs, because we've created so many jobs in the U.S. But I remind you that when we make those jobs in the U.S., that those people get high wages, they pay taxes. It's not a negative for the deficit. So either way, America wins. And I think, it depends really on how fast we can onshore American production, which has been the main priority of the president.
Yeah, I mean, I just think all of a sudden the Democrats have found a way to get affordability stick to their brand. And Kevin, President Trump came into office with this priority of getting inflation down. Let's not forget, we were at 40-year highs under Joe Biden.
Right.
How is it possible that the Democrats have been able to rally around this word, affordability, and make people think that that's what they're focused on and not what the Republicans are focused on going into an election year?
Right. It's just what happens sometimes when, one political party has a lot of the media echoing what they're saying. But the bottom line is, look back at the thing that you just mentioned, the fuel economy standards, that Joe Biden's team was set to say that it had to be 51 miles per gallon on average for cars in America. We went around D.C. and went to car dealers and said, what's the highest gas mileage car you have? And the most efficient car we found was 36 miles per gallon. It was a Honda. So that means that under Joe Biden's America, in just a few years, there's no internal combustion engine car that can be produced in America that meets their standards. And so what they did then, when you didn't meet their standards, is they hit the car companies with billion-dollar fines. And those billion-dollar fines, of course, were passed through as higher prices for cars for Americans and so on. So that there's lots and lots of things that we could do to reduce the problem of affordability. But the affordability problem is 100% created by the Biden administration with their their runaway regulation and their runaway inflation.
And let me just end on health care, because the president there as well coming up with this most favored nation status and dropping prices on prescription drug also fits right into your affordability theme. Do you have an opinion on what you want to see here with these Obamacare subsidies expiring at year end? I know that the House bill and the Senate Democrats are pushing 3 years. Extending these for 3 years is what Chuck Schumer wants, Kevin.
Well, we'll see where it ends up. President Trump had a great plan to give lots of money to rural hospitals, to have most favored nation treatment for drugs, and to have cost-sharing payments to Americans that need health care. And those cost-sharing payments, which aren't Obamacare, were vetoed by the Democrats or by the parliamentarian. But the thing I want to remind you is that the president has a proven track record on affordability in health care, and it's this. If you go back and look at our first term, when we came in and we started to negotiate with the drug companies and make sure that the FDA was approving generic drugs, we had 2 years in a row where the consumer price index for drugs went negative. We had declining drug prices. The only 2 years that happened, going all the way back to World War II. We did it then. We'll do it again.
Yeah. Kevin, I've got to tell you, it's been a beautiful shot behind you. I love talking with you with the gorgeous snow at the White House right behind you. I want to thank you for talking with me for this time while we watch the snow behind you. I'm sure it's cold there. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, Kevin Hassett at the White House this morning. We'll be right back. Stay with us.